But the last girl, 36, her husband is a famous novelist. She's the only one married to a French guy. The others live in the US. She lives in France, and her husband ends up doing something dumb. Like, he didn't just have an affair on set, because some of his novels were adapted into movies, and he had a chance to be a director and all that. So on one of his on the set of making movie of one of his novels, the lead actress there, he had a huge affair with her, and it didn't just it blew up. It became something the media eye, and people were romanticizing the affair, forgetting that this guy had a wife and children who were hurting. Novels in Bits listener, hello. So what's up? At the moment, I am just thanking God for a slow day. You know how sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, it's a slow day. This doesn't feel so good. But in my own case right now, I'm like, oh, thank God for slow days. Because, if they're all fast days, it doesn't balance. And if they're all slow days, it doesn't balance. There's a reason why there is day and there is night. And I don't want to enter into philosophizing or motivational speech. So I'm just going to say it there and leave it there. So anyhow, on today's episode, today is Thursday Riff. I decided to not call it Thursday Trivia anymore, because trivia just sounds like something small, something of little consequence. But this is of very large consequence. Okay, first of all, community. We have something to celebrate. It's a small win, but it's still a win regardless. And honestly, it makes my heart feel so good. So Novels in Bits in Nigeria, very specific, place number 5 on the books category. Woohoo! And then in place number 10 on the arts category for Apple Podcasts. So it's a very tiny niche win, but it's something. Because if I had never started, I would have never been in a position to even have this win. So it's great. Okay, I have a little confession. Novels in Bits is not even up to 1,000 listeners yet. I've been having all these strategies on promoting the podcast and everything. I've carried out some and everything, and I'm still going to carry out a lot. However, I've decided that at least for the next couple of days, for this weekend, at least until Monday, I just want to rest. I think I've been too busy. So my mind at a point was buzzing too much, and that is not good. Honestly, it's not. So I just want to take some time, read book, pray, just get myself into wholeness, and then we'll move from that space again. You get. So that's where I'm currently at. What about you? Where are you currently at? Just DM me on Instagram or WhatsApp or wherever and let me know. I'd love that. And, you can get my WhatsApp, you can get to me directly on WhatsApp through the link, my Linktree link that I'm going to share in the show notes today. I finally decided to open that. I'm grateful. It's still not perfect, but guy, if we start focusing on perfection in this life, we'll never start anything. So anyhow, so since today is a Thursday Riff, we're not doing a full novel, right? So we're not telling a story per se. Okay, so this is what we're doing today on today's Thursday Riff. So by the 24th of this month, it will be 3 months since Novels in Bits went live. 3 months. That's a huge growth. I've been doing this for 3 months, and we've read 8 novels so far. We've just said 8 novels so far. So that's not so much compared to how much I can read in a month, but it's a lot. By your own, on your own for many of us. When was the last time you actually completed at least 8 novels in 3 months? For some of us who are super bookworms, that is true. But then for many of us who are still super bookworms, but life really caught up with us, it's been a while since we actually kind of had that reading streak and all that. So 8 novels in 3 months, but it's going to improve in coming months and all that. Okay, so look at if you're just joining Novels in Bits and maybe you don't know where to start to listen from. Maybe you've tried a random episode, it didn't really gel and stuff like that. If this is the first episode of Novels in Bits you're listening to, you are at the best place. Honestly, you are the very best place. Okay, I'm just gonna give a brief rundown of the novels that we've gisted on this podcast, and then I'll just give the premise. Okay, so the first one was Meant to Be. Do you understand? That's Kate's story, Kate and Joe's story. Yeah. So the premise is simple. It's just that Joe came from this family of politician. So American royalty kind of thing, and his family is wealthy, this influential family. So Kate came from a family not only that they were poor, but they were struggling to make ends meet. And then her mom now went to get married, because it was just her and her mom. Her mom now went to get married this abusive policeman. But then Joe and Kate's world crossed when she grew up. She was discovered as a teen model, so that was like something that sustained her. Then when they were like in their early 30s, I think Kate was in late 20s, Joe was in early 30s when they finally met in the Hamptons, and then a romance developed between both of them and all that. So that's meant to be. And then the second story is a Duchess War. That's historical fiction. And in that story is about a girl who wanted to stay hidden, because she had a past that if people ever found out, they'll probably kill her and something. Her life is already ruined enough. And there is a story of that girl and a duke who has felt lonely and unseen all his life. And, he kind of got involved with these radical movements that were actually against people of his own rank. And so the thing is, what he was doing was kind of implicated on the girl. And the girl, being intelligent and smart, she traced him to be like, yeah, the person who's publishing these radical handbills, and they're blaming me for it. And if you don't, you have to stop publishing those handbills, or I'm going to expose you to be the one, and stuff like that. Like she literally threatened the Duke. And if you know British titles, a Duke's rank is so high that he's just directly beneath a prince or a king, stuff like that. So that was the story of the unlikely romance, and them finding healing together and all of that. So the third novel, which is said on Novels and Bits, is Trade Me, and that's by Courtney Milan. The Duchess was by Courtney Milan too. Meant to be. Check Meant to Be show notes. You'll see the name of the author and stuff. So Meant to Be is literally the first episode published on this podcast, the first and second episodes. So Trade Me. In Trade Me, it's the story of this billionaire guy who had these fears that he would die really soon, and then he was coping by running a lot. He wasn't really eating, so he was skinny. He was on the verge of a breakdown. And then this immigrant Asian girl who all her life she's had to worry about money, and then they kind of had to swap lives. That's trade lives. That's Trade Me, and what he really taught them about each other's lives and themselves and stuff like that. So now, the fourth story is The Girl Who Steps into the Past. And that's the story of, I can't remember. Jane's story, Jane and James' story. Really generic, but this book is actually not generic. It's pretty okay. So, anyhow, that's their story, The Girl Who Stepped into the Past. And it was about her, like, she's this historical fiction author, and her books weren't really doing well, and her wedding was close by. Her fiancé wanted her to, like, stop, and she was planning this trip to England from America so that she could research this place and then maybe write a book that'll finally become a bestseller and give her a lot of money. But her fiancé wasn't in support, and he broke things off with her when she was like, I want to pursue my writing instead of getting a 9-to-5. So when she went for the research, stubbornly determined to prove him wrong, she kind of had this accident that sent her back to the 19th century. And then she met this Earl guy, and whose sister just died, and it was a whole mystery and romance kind of entanglement. So that's The Girl Who Stepped into the Past. And then the fifth story we did on Novels and Bits is Deborah. It's actually not a novel. It's a Korean drama, because I happened to binge watch like 7 episodes of this drama around that time. And I was like, let me not just binge watch it vain. Let me tell people on the podcast about the show. And it was really nice because she's this dating coach who supposedly knew all there was to how to get the guy who's the right guy, and I can't miss it. And she was dating this guy for a long time, and she was already waiting for him to propose. It wasn't coming, and next thing she found him cheating, and he's like all suffocated to be around her, and he ends things with her. But it was really an awful breakup, and then we got to witness a heartbreak. It was so intense, and that's Bara's story. Okay, and then the sixth story, and probably the story I've promoted the most, Skin of the Sea. That's it's inspired, but it's historic too. Like when slave trade first started in Nigeria, like when the Portuguese first came to Nigeria, or rather where it's called Nigeria right now, to get slaves and take them back. And obviously they had to go through the sea. So many slaves didn't make it. Many died. They were sick. They were thrown into the ocean, into the sea. And that's where Yemoja came in. Yemoja is like the mother of the water. So she created seven Mami water, and Simi was one of them. So this is like Simi's story story because Simi was not supposed to save anybody alive. She just meant to collect the souls of those who died in the sea and enable their journey back to Olodumare, the creator of the whole world. But then she accidentally saved this human boy, and that was against Olodumare's decree. So she had to make this journey to apologize to Olodumare and all of that. Then the seventh story is Misadventures with a Time Traveler, another time travel story. But in this case, the guy was a guy traveling now from the past into the future. The girl who starts into the past is like a girl in the present time, starts into the past. But in the case of Misadventures with a Time Traveler, is a guy who traveled to the future, to the girl. And he was this prince, and so at the time when the French Revolution were going on, they could have killed him just like they killed the rest of his family. And then he had to meet this girl in present time and somehow get her not just to fall in love with him, but to proclaim her love for him in front of witnesses. If not, he's going to cease to exist in 28 days. And that was the story. And the girl is a huge unbeliever that doesn't believe in Prince Charming and all that, all the strong, independent, modern women. So the whole story was trying to make her believe, do you get? And also his struggle and pain with the trauma of the past and all that. Really awesome, sweet story. And then had a whole lot of modern lingos, Gen Z things that even I don't know most of it, but it was really fun. One of those reads that had me like, oh, I have to finish this. Then the most recent story we did on Novels and Bits is Loving a Lost Lord. And that's a story of Adam, this guy, he's part Hindu, part English. He's a duke too. And then someone was trying to murder him, but he ended up surviving. But, they blew up his yacht, and then he ended up surviving. But because when the yacht exploded, he floated far away from the site of the explosion, and they thought he was dead for a while. And the person who saved him was this girl called Maria, and he had lost his memories, and they fell in love. And then when he found out he was a duke, there was all kinds of trickery around there. So before they were even together, there was so much to walk through. And Maria also had her own stuff going on, like her dad had just died, she didn't have any other family and all that. So it was really cool and stuff like that. So these are the novels we've done so far. And then the novels that are coming up is The Affair by Danielle Steele. I read Danielle Steele when I was so small. As much as her stories are not typical in terms of girl meets boy, fall in love, it's not normally has this tone of women's fiction, or just there's a certain tone it has to it that I don't know how to describe yet. But the thing is, at least her stories always have a happy ending. So if it's happy ending, I'm in for it. So The Affair is a story of this woman with 4 daughters. Her last baby is 36. Obviously, they're all grown-up girls, really gorgeous, have their own lives. But the last girl, 36, her husband is a famous novelist. She's the only one married to a French guy. The others live in the US. She lives in France, and her husband ends up doing something dumb. He didn't just have an affair on set, because some of his novels were adapted into movies, and he had a chance to be a director and all that. So on one of his on the set of making movie of one of his novels, the lead actress there, he had a huge affair with her, and it didn't just, it blew up. It became something in the media eye, and people were romanticizing the affair, forgetting that this guy had a wife and children who were hurted. So we're seeing that whole journey. How did she deal with it? And this guy, what actually got into him to do something? Because he and his wife had been together 16 years, and he went to have this affair, and it was really horrible, and a lot of things happened. So that's the stories that are coming up. So this story is coming up next week, so you want to stay tuned. So we're going to talk about it. Then another story that's coming up is Behind Closed Doors. It's another historical fiction. This one is in the 16th century. Do you understand? And in this period of time, it is a story that it's set both in Stockholm and England, but mostly in England at the time of Queen Elizabeth Tudor. We've heard of the Tudors, so it's in her time. It's really dramatic, set in the English courts, and there was so much to learn. Corrie, the main girl, she had this idea that life was a certain way, but then real life showed her shige, and she learned a lot. And the main guy too set out on this vengeance path, and then really found out that oh my gosh. So I'm actually already spoiling it, but you want to actually come in because there's so much going on, so much drama. And then Corrie's cousin, foul-mouthed Anne, God, that story would not have been so good without Anne. So, and because Anne initially was jealous of Corey, and we get to see why, because Corey seemed like this perfect girl, was undainted, and the queen's pet, and all stuff like that. So you want to see behind closed doors. So it's coming up perhaps like in like next 2 weeks. Come in, let's talk about this story. So what I'm currently reading right now, I'm reading Dragon Force, book 1. That's like this community that they had the responsibility of protecting and training dragons, but then the chieftain of their village was draining powers from the people, and then he wanted to drain powers of the dragon next, and the only person who could stop him was this invisible twin girl who's never supposed to exist, because twins were an abomination. You're supposed to kill them. She was born invisible and she had to hide all her life, but since she's the only person that he's charming, and whatever he's doing to other people is not working on, she's the only person who had saved her people, and she made friends with this small dragon that was also kicked out of his own dragon community, or rather her own dragon community, because dragon is a she, and they have to come together and try to find a way to save the people. This is just book 1, so I'm pretty sure there are other books I have to read on it, but hey, it's interesting. Then the second book I'm currently reading is The Lighthouse Inn. The Lighthouse Inn is a story that like this girl used to have this insane past. She used to be quite promiscuous and everything. So she randomly slept with somebody, had coitus with somebody in a bathroom in a bar, and the thing got her pregnant. So having a child made her responsible. So 4 years after that incident, that same man, like her, because she now had this daughter she was leaving for, trying to run this in, trying to get her life together. She's really quite young, like 25 or thereabouts, and her baby daddy walks into her inn. Obviously he doesn't remember her because we're both stone drunk and everything, and he comes to the inn, and he's actually there to try to buy the inn from her because he wants to do this redevelopment project, but he obviously doesn't say that at first. He's trying to just be friendly, and she's thinking, okay, if he proves to be a good human being, I could tell him that we have a daughter and everything. So that's just like this story, and I mean there are more happening in the story. For the most part, it feels like the kind of romance stories we grew up with. Like, would they get together? Would they not? Would they forgive? Would they have a good life? But I think it has the potential to be more. I'm not done reading it. That's what I'm currently reading. So, yeah. So, what I've recently listened to, like, I used to think that there are no podcasts like my own. And I did not do my research well. I'm sorry. So I literally have to change my trailer because of this. So I can put the right information there. How to re-upload my trailer next week latest. So either ways, I discovered more podcasts like mine. Maybe not exactly like mine, because definitely we all have different variations of the same thing, and that's fair. When it comes to books category, books reviews, podcasts are still more common than the whole telling of the whole story. But still, I found most podcasts like mine, thank God. So one of it is Stephanie Sue's podcast. It's mostly true crime she does. But, she actually talked about, gisted the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo. That's by what's her name? Ted Jenkins. Was it someone like that? So anyhow, she talks about the novel, and oh my God, I love listening to Stephanie Sue talk. I'm like, is this the magic people probably face when they listen to my podcast? Because once you start listening to her, you don't want to stop. You want to I want to hear everything you want to say. I want to hear. And her podcast length is much longer than mine, and she's been at it for 6 years, and it's so nice she stayed consistent because she's a huge deal. On YouTube, she has I think over 700 million views or so on her podcast, for her podcast YouTube channel, and then even on the main podcast, the reviews are too plenty. So it's just so awesome to see that at least there are people who's gone ahead of me, and I can look at them and get ideas on what to go. Then we're done. Literally, today's episode is done. But before we officially close, I have a question for you. Please, do you know of any interested sponsors, like people who are interested in sponsoring a podcast, or a podcast that tells stories like this, or want to maybe start advertising a podcast and they're about I really love that you reach out to me to tell me if you know anybody like that, or where I can look and stuff like that. It'd be so helpful. And then for the last thing, please, if you've enjoyed this podcast episode, rate and review wherever you listen. I haven't seen any ratings and reviews yet. And I did say I was going to reach out to many of us, of the members in our community, and text us to rate and review. And I haven't quite gotten around to doing that since I'm resting, but I'm going to. And I hope you really take time to rest through and go back rejuvenated to do whatever I have to do next week. And thank you. I thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really don't take it for granted like ever. So see you on Monday. I love you and I appreciate you so much. Bye bye.